We've been using the surface planing bit to mill our stock so that it's smooth. We started with some pretty rough material here. This next project that we're going to do is this ornamental bowl that you see here. It's actually done in 3 sections. The first section is the bowl, of course. It was done on the rotary table, and the base was also done on the rotary table. The stem, of course, was done center to center. It's just a single start barley twist. I know you're familiar with how to do that, so we won't show you that. But we want to use the rotary table, the gear-driven rotary table, to do the bowl section and the base. And you can see that we've taken our material and the dimensions for the material for the base and the bowl are both in the shop notes. But this will be the base piece. This will be the bowl piece. It's a little bit bigger. We're going to use, for a lot of what we're going to do, we're going to use this 2-inch core box bit here. That will allow us to clean out the material for the inside of the bowl, and of course we're going to do a little bit of indexing here. We'll show you how we do that to get that little detail on there. And then for this bottom, we just used a surface planing bit to clean that out. And then a couple of bits here to round that over and give it a little bit of a surface here. That same 2-inch core box bit was used here on the base. You can see how that curves up, and then of course the same indexing there. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with the bowl section. We're going to use double-sided tape. We're actually going to, you can see that we're going to mill 2 sides of it, underneath the side of the bowl as well as the top. We're going to actually start by milling the top. The reason being that you can see that this gives us a little bit of a surface there with which we can then flip it over, attach it back to the table, and mill this backside. On the backside, we don't have the luxury of having a lot of material with which to adhere that to the table, and so we're actually going to do this first. As you can see, we're using the gear-driven rotary table here. It's attached to the rails of the machine. This is the model 1000. The nice thing about the 1000 and 1500 is you can adjust this bed up and down. And so we've actually lowered the rails to accommodate our thicker material here. On the model 500 and 600, you don't have the luxury of being able to come that up and down on the rails. And so you may want to use spacers if you're doing larger diameter or larger thickness of material. Now, you'll notice then that we've also got some holes in here. I want to talk about that a minute. This hole here is what we've used to find center on the machine. I've actually put a 1/4-inch upcut spiral bit into the machine and drilled it once I identified center. Now, you need to know that when you set up your machine, don't assume that 0 on your tape for doing spindle work is also going to be 0 or center on your rotary table. What you want to do is actually use this point right here, put your bit in and identify center off of this as opposed to using center off of the scale. This is going to be more accurate than your scale. Now these other holes here that we put into the table are simply allowing us to release the block. You'll notice that when we put our blocks on here like this, we actually have left a spot so that we can actually get a screwdriver under there and just kind of pop that up. You'll find, frankly, that double-sided tape works really well. It's oftentimes very difficult to get that off if you're cranking on it or trying to pop it up this way. And so by having something like that, you can just then get a screwdriver and kind of pop that up gently. And so you'll want to do something like that. I've made one here for the small blank, and then of course I've got one for my bigger blank as well. And you'll notice that on this large blank, this is the one that we're going to use for the bowl. We've got our double-sided tape on there, and now we'll just bring that on and identify the corners based off of these lines that I've put on here. These lines are, when I put the handle straight down, then I've got a line that comes parallel with the rails and a line that comes perpendicular off the rails. And so I'm going to, with those 4 lines, then I'm going to line up the corners for my material. And just a couple of items before we begin milling. We've got our 2-inch core box bits set into the router. we're actually going to plunge down onto the workpiece there, and once it hits the piece, then we're going to set our plunge bar. We've used a 1-inch spacer, and we're going to plunge 1 inch. Now, of course, we're not going to do that all in one cut. That's the ultimate depth at this point that we're going to take. I've also set up the carrier tray. I knew that my rotary table, when I set it up, center was identified at 36 inches along the long axis, or the x-axis, and so I've locked the split nut into place so that the carrier tray is not going to travel on me, and so it's fixed. We're also locked down on the y-axis across the router so that I can drive it with the screw. That's going to give me a great deal of control, and I can identify how far out I want to go. Of course, I don't want to go clear to the edge of the material. I want to stop about a 1/2 inch before there, and so I'm just going to use some caution as I go across the piece. Just pull that router out of the way so you can see what's happening here. We've actually used that core box bit and plunged to our plunge depth. Again, we did that a little bit at a time, and then after we reached that depth, then we started with our x-axis screw to push that across the workpiece, and so it's now milling it from the side here as we rotate that piece like this. Now you can see that as we went out on the side of the piece, we were able to create that cove. We did this one a little bit differently. We actually left a little bit of a reveal on the edge there, sort of like you might do on a lathe or on turning operations. We'll go back in now and show you how to do the indexing for the reeds or the flutes around the circumference. All we're going to do is, in this case, I think we'll just use that 2-inch core box bit, and we'll set a stop. We'll show you how to do that. But when we rotate the piece, we're actually going to just rotate it a 1/2 of a turn, cut into it, bring it back out, rotate the next 1/2, and then into it again, and you'll see that as it does that, it'll create those little scallops around the inside of that bowl. Now, to set up the router to mill these scallops, we're actually going to use a stop on this back side, on the side towards the lead screw. I've actually placed the router bit so that it's up against the material. It's down inside the bowl, and so I know that that's where my maximum cut is, right here where this split nut is. So I'm going to bring that stop in, and instead of bringing it all the way snug against that nut, I'm actually going to back it off about a 1/16 of an inch is all. And so I've got just a little bit of light between the locking collar and the split nut. And now we'll open that split nut, and now this is what's going to determine the position of the scallop, is when I bring that router in against that stop, and I'll go back out, rotate it or index it, if you will, on the rotary table, and then bring it back in and back out, and you'll see that scallop develop. Now you can see then that just by indexing that around and bringing that bit in and bumping that, kissing that material, we can get that scallop in there. Now just sort of a heads up here, if you're not using a good sharp bit, you'll get some burning on those divots, and so sharpen your bits before you do it, and then when you bring that in, don't sit on it on the edge, just kind of kiss it and pop off of it, and if you have to do it a couple times, you'll get a cleaner cut than if you just sit there on the material. Now this bit here, the 1-inch rope molding bit, is what we'll use then to just cut the cove around the top here. And all we're going to do is just going to set the bit in there and rotate the workpiece. And once we've rotated that 360 degrees, we'll have that little bit of a lip on there. We've actually locked the router into place so that it's not going to go anywhere. And we've set our plunge depth so that we can't go any further than a predetermined depth there, and we'll just rotate the piece. And now we can smooth that up by taking a surface planing bit and knocking these corners off down here, and even smoothing that up so that it's completely round on the piece. Now that we've milled this top side, we're ready to flip this piece over, but of course we want to get it lined back onto center on the table. So we've just taken some waste blocks here and put them on 3 sides so that we'll have something to coordinate with when we flip it over and put it back down. And then we should just be able to just get a screwdriver and pop under, get under the workpiece here and pop that off. When we go to flip the workpiece over so that we can mill the backside, we want to create some little spacer blocks, if you will, to attach here on this flat level to give us a little bit more of a area which we can double-side tape to our table. You'll see here on this piece that we have actually taken and attached our double-sided tape onto these spacers here, and we'll just create those the same width as whatever the depth of this cut is. I think that gives you a pretty good idea of what we're doing when we mill the ornamental bowl. We're just using the rotary table, of course, and doing some indexing. I think you get the general idea. Let me just give you a word of caution. We have milled this in one complete block, if you will, one complete piece. And so you may have some end grain problems, either with burning or tear out if you're not going fast or slow enough, excuse me, or if your bit is not sharp enough. One of the things you may want to do to avoid some of that is if you take material, 8 pieces is what we've done, and mitered them at 22.5 degrees, why then you can create pieces that are not going to give you end grain problems and tear out and that type of thing. So you may want to use this type of a method as opposed to, it's actually preferred, as opposed to a single piece.